Giannis to Giannis to the Heat. Ooh, it's over with. Bobby Porter's with it. Ooh, it's over with. Ooh, y'all don't think y'all understand from the top to bottom, from the coaches to the culture. We talking about an organization that lays its hat on winning basketball games. The league has changed. Y'all about to see Giannis look like how LeBron looked when he was with the Heat. Worst case scenario, him and Bam. Worst case scenario, him and Bam. Tim Duncan, David Robinson. I don't want to hear that. Love.
Let's break down one of the biggest trades to shake up the NBA landscape this offseason. Giannis Antetokounmpo is officially heading to Miami. This is the kind of move that doesn't just shift one franchise's fortunes, it reshapes the entire conversation around contenders in the Eastern Conference. In return for Giannis, the Milwaukee Bucks are getting back Tyler Hero, Kel'el Ware, a handful of additional role players, and several draft picks to help rebuild for the future. Now, naturally, this trade raises an obvious question that a lot of fans and analysts have been asking. Why didn't Milwaukee pursue a star-for-star swap involving Jaylen Brown instead? After all, Boston was reportedly offering not just Brown, but 2 first-round picks on top of that, which on paper sounds like a strong package. But according to people close to the league, Milwaukee had real concerns about whether Jaylen Brown would commit to the franchise for the long haul. There were doubts about his willingness to sign an extension and build something lasting in Milwaukee. So instead of taking that risk, the front office opted for the Miami package, a route the organization felt more comfortable with since it leans into player development, accumulating young talent, and stockpiling future draft assets rather than betting everything on one star's loyalty. On the other side of this deal, Miami is suddenly looking like a serious contender. Pairing Bam Adebayo with Giannis Antetokounmpo gives the Heat one of the most physically dominant and versatile front courts in the entire league. Defensively, this duo could be a nightmare for opposing offenses, and on the boards, there's almost no team that can match that combination of size, length, and athleticism. That said, every blockbuster trade comes with its share of complications, and Miami's situation is no exception. There are growing reports suggesting that Norman Powell, one of the team's key perimeter scorers, could walk away in free agency, and if that happens, it would be a significant blow to this roster. Powell has been the kind of player who can create his own shot from the outside, exactly the type of scoring threat that becomes even more valuable once you've traded away a chunk of your perimeter shooting, which Miami essentially did by sending out players like Hero in this deal. Reports out of shows like Get Up have even suggested that unless Powell is willing to take a steep discount on his next contract, Miami is likely to lose him. And realistically, that's not a position Powell is in right now. For the majority of his career, he played a sixth-man role, often coming off the bench, first with the Clippers, then elsewhere. Now, coming off an all-star caliber season, this is his moment to maximize his earnings. Taking a discount just to stay in Miami wouldn't make much financial sense for him at this stage of his career. Interestingly, teams like the Detroit Pistons have been mentioned as a potential landing spot for Powell, since they're reportedly looking for another reliable scorer to pair alongside Cade Cunningham, someone who can create his own offense and take some of the ball handling pressure off Cunningham's shoulders. Adding a player like Powell, who can consistently put up 20-plus points a night, would be a meaningful upgrade for a team looking to take the next step. Meanwhile, back in Milwaukee, former Bucks player Michael Redd shared a heartfelt and reflective statement about the trade and what it means for the franchise. He spoke about the nature of professional sports, how players inevitably come and go, but the team, the city, and the legacy of the franchise are what truly endure. Redd reflected on his own time with the Bucks, recalling the impact that players like Glenn Robinson and Ray Allen had on Milwaukee before him, and how later on younger players like Brandon Jennings got their own opportunity to shine. Redd was careful to note that he doesn't consider himself in the same category as some of these legendary names, especially not Giannis, but used his own experience to illustrate a larger point. Every player who wears that jersey matters to the city for a period of time, and eventually every single one of them moves on, ages out, or gets replaced when the franchise decides it's time for the next chapter. Red praised Giannis's incredible run in Milwaukee, bringing a championship to a city that had waited 50 years for one, winning back-to-back MVP awards, earning Defensive Player of the Year honors, and committing over a decade of his career to that franchise. Red acknowledged that Giannis could have pushed for a trade much sooner given his caliber, but instead stayed and gave everything he had to that organization and that city. Still, as Red put it, the page eventually turns for everyone. It turned on legends like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar decades ago. It turned on Red and his own teammates in their era. And now it's turning on Giannis as well. According to Red, this isn't a moment for blame or bitterness. It's simply the natural cycle of professional sports moving forward. Red later responded to people reacting to his statement, saying that some fans are upset with Giannis, others are upset with the Bucks organization, but for him personally, he's simply aware of how the business side of basketball operates, and he expressed gratitude for the years that ultimately led to sustained competitiveness and a championship for the franchise. Now, looking back, there had always been conflicting reports coming out of Milwaukee about Giannis's future. At times, it was suggested that he wanted out. Other times, reports claimed the opposite, that he wanted to stay in Milwaukee long-term and even retire as a Buck. But if you looked closely at his actions over the past couple of seasons, a different picture began to emerge. He appeared visibly frustrated on the sideline at times, seemed distant from some of his teammates, and the team itself began struggling, getting eliminated in the first round of the playoffs in back-to-back years, and then missing the postseason altogether last season. Adding to that, there were a few notable moments where Giannis made comments in post-game interviews suggesting uncertainty about his future, including statements about not knowing whether he'd even be on the roster going forward. He consistently left that door open, which only fueled more speculation. Now that the move has officially happened, the focus shifts to how both franchises rebuild from here. For Miami, there's still clearly work to be done. If Norman Powell does end up leaving in free agency, the obvious question becomes who steps up to fill that perimeter scoring void. Donovan Mitchell can certainly contribute in that area, but it may not be enough on its own to replace what Powell brought to the table. On top of that, with Bam Adebayo and Giannis Antetokounmpo both earning significant salaries, a large portion of Miami's cap space is already committed. That's going to make roster construction around them a genuinely interesting challenge moving forward. To their credit, though, Miami's front office has historically been excellent at finding value, whether through the draft, signing undervalued free agents, or scouting talented players from international leagues. So there's reasonable confidence they'll find ways to fill out the roster effectively. But here's the key difference compared to the earlier Jimmy Butler era in Miami. Back then, the Heat could play the underdog role, sneak into the playoffs as a lower seed, and surprise people by knocking off higher-ranked teams. That approach worked well for them, and they leaned into it. Now, with a roster headlined by Giannis Antetokounmpo, the expectations shift significantly. At minimum, Miami should be looking to secure home court advantage in the first round, and beyond that, they'll be viewed as a legitimate threat to make a real push out of the Eastern Conference. As I mentioned earlier, there's still plenty of work ahead for this roster to fully take shape. With Giannis now on the roster, the expectations shift significantly. At minimum, Miami should be looking to secure home court advantage in the first round, and beyond that, they'll be viewed as a legitimate threat to make a real push out of the Eastern Conference. As I mentioned earlier,